Are the Canes set to erase their playoff demons? Tonight's performances show just how dominant they might be capable of being. Plus, Leo Carlsson is here reminding you that he needs to be talked about in the same vein as Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini. There's also this guy named Nathan MacKinnon. He's got no time for the superstars who can't legally drink in the States yet. He cooked the Canucks tonight. That and more ahead here on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hockey fans, welcome into another edition of Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of all the night's action in the NHL during the regular season and the playoffs. Whether it's one game, a 16-game frenzy, or something in between, which is exactly where we were tonight. At 8, we're always here with the latest for you. We're available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com. Win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Alex Wiederspiel, going solo tonight. I write about hockey for Yardbarker, and I hang here on Locked On NHL Game Night most nights of the week, where you can get the latest on all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the NHL, with a big assist from our Locked On NHL local experts. It was another night in the league that reminded us that a changing of the guard is underway, whether that's a changing of the guard with regards to who the elite teams might be or who the playoff teams might be. We're going to see some new ones in the playoffs that we have not seen in a while. There are playoff droughts ending this season. It is happening. And from a player perspective as well. I'm not saying Connor McDavid's not still the best player in hockey. Nathan MacKinnon certainly is making an argument for that with the way he played tonight and has played all season. But there are three young superstars, and honestly more than that, but three that immediately come to mind. Two of them were in action tonight that right now are making a very, very strong case that there is a changing of the guard underway, that they must at least be talked about in the same vein that we talk about some of the other top players in the National Hockey League. But before we get to any of that, we must start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because of course the question always is, how does this affect the Leafs? But the better question is, how does this affect the Canes? Heck of a game, 5 first period goals as Carolina and Toronto dueled, and for 40 minutes, this was actually a great hockey game. William Nylander, I always want to call him Alex Nylander. William Nylander scores first for Toronto, 1-0 lead. Then Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov. Good to see Svechnikov getting himself moving. Another multi-point night for him. They score the next 2 goals. Carolina led 2-1. And then I was really impressed by the way Toronto fought back a greasy, hard-working goal by the Leafs as a whole. John Tavares finishes close to the net. 2-2. Nylander would then score again in the first period. 3-2 on the power play. Toronto leads going into intermission, and they would build a 2-goal lead as Austin Matthews would score his 9th of the season. He's on pace for 46 goals right now. Still think there's probably more there from Matthews, that we haven't quite hit that final gear yet in this season. A guy who we know has the ability to score 60 and has even flirted with 70 in the past. But the Canes turned it on in the third period. They scored 3 unanswered goals dating back to the second period. But in the third period, they outshot Toronto 21-2, outchanced them 11-4 in high danger chances, according to Natural Stat Trick. And it was a completely stifling performance. Toronto was having a hard time doing much of anything. We have seen Florida do this. We've seen, to an extent, Carolina do this, but this was the most Florida-like we had ever seen Carolina. And the question is, did their defensive makeover, their addition of Nikolai Ehlers, did these things make a difference in getting the Canes over the top? The answer right now is very much a maybe. But boy, it's starting to feel like Carolina, who's now 11-4 on the season, starting to feel like they might actually be. And I say this as a Canes skeptic. I know, as if I don't look like an instant Canes skeptic with the gear I'm wearing. But I say this as someone who's been a Canes skeptic, who's never really thought that they belonged in the same conversation as the elite teams. And I still think there are flaws. But oh man, Carolina looked awfully good. They looked real in this one. And with the vacuum left by Florida's injury issues, Carolina has as good a shot as anybody right now based on their performance tonight. The final word on the Canes belongs to Locked On Carolina Hurricanes host Zach Martin.
The Carolina Hurricanes won their 4th game in a row, defeating the Maple Leafs 5-4 in Toronto on the Hall of Fame game. What a wild back and forth, seeing 5 goals in the first period, 3 for the Leafs, 2 for the Hurricanes. Hurricanes go down 4-2 thanks to an Austin Matthews goal. During the second period, Hurricanes storm back to get 2 of their, again, 1 in the second, get 1 in the third thanks to Taylor Hall. And then Logan Stankoven with the game-winning goal, making it 5-4. Multi-point night for him. Also multi-point nights as well for Keandre Miller and Nikolai Ehlers as they get 2 assists each. Earlier in the game on the power play goal for Aho, and then later on in the game winner for Stankoven. Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis also getting onto the score sheet per usual. Now Jarvis is the first Carolina Hurricane up to 10. Sean Walker gets his 3rd goal in 4 games. He is on an absolute heater. And now the Carolina Hurricanes, after winning their last 4, are now 11-4 on the season, and they are rolling in Raleighwood.
Raleighwood, how about that? I like that. And they are rolling. There's no question about that. We got to talk about Toronto just for a moment here. The Leafs are now 8-7-1, and they're going to regret not getting, well, maybe that's a strong sense of the word, but they might regret not getting a point out of this one. And again, I say this about the first 40 minutes, really the first 30 minutes. I liked the way the Leafs played. They looked to me like a Leafs team that knew how to do greasy, hardworking things. And I hate the cliche about them as sort of this soft group. Toronto defensively has been much, much better in the post-Babcock years. Like they Sheldon Keefe made sure that those Leafs teams were better defensively. Their issue has always been secondary scoring. And the issue is you're not going to find much secondary scoring if you can only muster up 2 shots in all situations in the final 20 minutes of a hockey game. That's just not going to work against a team that you might have to go through in a theoretical Eastern Conference Finals if you're Toronto. So that's not going to work. They've got work to do. Let's move over where Chicago met with Detroit. And boy, this was a game that I think Detroit fans think they probably deserved a little bit of a better result. 45 saves from Arvid Soderblom in this game. But I will say, while Detroit definitely commanded the puck, owned the puck, dominated in quantity, they were also playing behind for most of this game. The Hawks were a little bit closer when you look in terms of quality, medium and high danger chances. And again, it's the brilliance from Connor Bedard. He scores a great goal off a one-timer, added 2 assists. They were real savvy little passes from Bedard. And I think the thing that I'm seeing from him is that even when he's not playing his best game, I still think the way that Bedard is driving play right now, the way he is taking a back seat as a goal scorer, continues to impress, as Connor Bedard is right up there with the points lead with Macklin Celebrini and Leo Carlsson. I think they are at 25, 25, and 24 now. I have to go back and double check that. But Bedard, if you compare him to a guy like Jack Hughes and you look at the same level of progression, where Hughes started to really break out in year 3 of his career, that's where Bedard is now. And the difference is where Bedard has been particularly impressive, he has not had the same level of injury history that Hughes has had, especially to this point in his career, which is really impressive. It always felt like as Bedard continued to improve in terms of his frame, adding man muscle, again, kid played on one of the worst teams in the league from the age of 18 on, it's starting to really look like this is the guy who was drafted first overall and was compared to as close to a generational talent as we had seen in a while. Now, maybe Celebrini still winds up being the better of these two, but Chicago fans should consider that Bedard has, in fact, arrived. Third straight loss for the Detroit Red Wings, only 2 goals in the entirety of that span. One other note, Chicago gets Oliver Moore's first career goal for Chicago. He really is looking like he's starting to belong in the NHL. Really quickly on Detroit, I am still a Red Wing. I'm Red Wings pilled. I believe in Detroit. This was the type of night that you're just, apparently when you're in a shooting slump, you're in a shooting slump. Only scoring 1 on 46 shots is not going to be common most nights. But I think it's fair to say that Detroit, I don't think is as elite as they looked to open the season when they went on that big run and opened 9-4. I think they're going to be a little bit closer to sort of a high 90s, maybe 100-point team that is going to be flirting with that number 3 spot in the Atlantic Division, maybe the number 1 wild card spot in the conference. We'll see. Leo Carlsson with another big night, and the Ducks look like they're easily going to clear what was a very surprisingly low bar when the season began, and now they are all alone atop the Pacific Division trying to end a long playoff drought. That and more coming up on Locked On NHL Game Night. Now, you just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday, right? How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. It's tough being in that spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. And I know from experience, I hate being in that position. That's exactly when Indeed's Sponsored Jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now, you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, so let's go out to Anaheim, where the Ducks were 1 goal short of free chicken for the fans. It got called back on an offside. I believe it was Cutter Gauthier with about 48 seconds left in the game who had his goal called back. Would have been chicken night for the fans as a result. They've gotten that a few times this year. Anaheim gets 2 goals on the evening from young players. Beckett Seneca, former top pick, was a 3rd overall pick for Anaheim. Leo Carlsson, former top pick, 2nd overall pick for Anaheim. The youth movement is officially producing for Anaheim. The Ducks have rocketed to the top of the Pacific Division. Leo Carlsson now with 25 points in just 15 games. The Ducks power play is also humming. This was one of the worst power plays in the league for the last couple of years, and now they were number 12 heading into tonight. I'm not sure where they are as the night ended. They added a couple of power play goals, both from Carlsson in that case, and the movement just looked really, really crisp on those power play goals. Leo Carlsson looks like he might be the real deal. There were some comparisons with the way his effort and defense were when he was drafted to a guy like maybe Patrice Bergeron, but boy, if he's going to score like this as well, sky might be the limit for this guy again. We could be talking about him in an Alex Barkov sense in a couple of seasons if this continues. He looks phenomenal. Kyle Carr's got the final word from Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
7 in a row for the Anaheim Ducks. They come out with the win, 4-1 over the Winnipeg Jets. Almost made it 5-1, but McTavish was offside, so unfortunately, no go there. Seneca gets 2, Carlsson gets 2. First time Seneca gets multiple goals in a game and almost a hat trick for both those guys. So exciting stuff. 7 in a row. The Ducks are flying. Fly together.
7 in a row now for Anaheim, and the Ducks, again, alone at the top of the division now, as Winnipeg on the night, not one that they're going to love. Now, granted, they had some issues defending the Ducks power play. That's going to be a challenge with that many skilled players. At 5-on-5, this game was a little bit closer, and actually, by Winnipeg standards this season, they're one of the worst teams in the league in terms of shot attempt shares. At 5-on-5 this season, they just haven't had the puck enough, and there have been issues with regards to that. And I will say, counterattacking is a perfectly viable style if you can master it, but being down around 43% at the bottom of the league in terms of 5-on-5 shot share and shot share attempts, that's not good over this length of stretch. Now, I do wonder if a healthy Cole Perfetti could potentially be the answer. Let's get the final word on the Winnipeg Jets from Locked On Winnipeg's Harrison Lee.
Jets are getting absolutely cooked in California right now. This time, another loss, 4-1 to the Anaheim Ducks. I'm Harrison Lee from Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. After a tough loss against the San Jose Sharks and, of course, the Kings earlier, the Jets needed a big response game, and Arniel was pretty pissed. He scrambled the lines last game. There were some, terse statements made after the loss to San Jose. So what did the Jets do? They follow it up with an embarrassing game against Anaheim. They really didn't look competitive for much of the game. They got outplayed, outworked, and outchanced by a team that had played the previous night against the Vegas Golden Knights and had even gone to overtime. A tough loss, another one on a tough road trip. Hopefully the Jets can rebound. We'll chat about this on Monday's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. See you then. Have a great night. And as always, go Jets go.
And that's right. We appreciate the report. This is now the #1 sports podcasting network. So much appreciated. Winnipeg with the loss tonight brings us to Pittsburgh, where the Penguins have had a great start to the season, but they might regret not getting a point out of this one where they led and Los Angeles would come from behind in the third period. This was an evenly matched game, but a late goal allows Los Angeles to walk out with 2 points and Pittsburgh with none. Not the greatest defensive play in the world from Erik Carlsson on the Kevin Fiala winner in the third period. He's been much better this season. That, though, a good taste of where Carlsson is at times when it comes to one-on-one defending in the zone with a guy bearing down. Corey Perry, what is going on with Corey Perry? Can someone explain this to me? He scored the tying goal in this one, and Corey Perry is all of a sudden on just since coming back from injury and getting healthy, he is scoring at an absolutely silly pace. He has been a point per game player, 7 goals now in 10 games for Corey Perry. The old man still got it, apparently. Kudos to Corey Perry, and LA has needed every single one of those goals. Question that I've been having about Pittsburgh, watching the way that they have played, watching the way that Evgeny Malkin in particular has thrived in Dan Muse's system, I am starting to wonder, especially having watched as much Rangers hockey as I have, was Mike Sullivan's system overtaxing the Penguins? Did Dan Muse figure out a way to maybe dial it back a little bit so that he could dial it up in the select moments? Now, again, Pittsburgh doesn't get the win tonight. There are going to be questions about how real the Penguins are. There's a little bit of chance trading going on, which is no surprise if you know where Dan Muse is coming from, having been kind of a Peter Laviolette disciple. He's worked for Laviolette at a couple of different stops, but it's also worth noting here that the big question is going to be about the goaltending, because the Penguins can trade chances with the offensive talent that they have. The question is, can the goaltending hold up? I am still not 100% sure if it can. I am a believer that Artur Silovs can figure some things out. Not as much of a believer in Tristan Jarry at this point, but we'll see. The realness of the Penguins is fully going to be about the goaltending, because the offense, they're going to be able to win their chances. Like, if they're trading chances, you're not going to find many better players who are going to bury those chances in a type of system like that. But again, the goaltending, I have some concerns there. Ottawa and Utah, the final. Ottawa gets the win 4-2. This was an interesting game for a couple of different reasons. Among them, this felt like kind of a stylistic or ideological battle between these two. So Ridley Gregg scores the first goal. Then Clayton Keller responds with an absolutely gorgeous blend of high effort, skill, and speed to tie it at 1. Ottawa would score twice more before Utah could respond. First, Jordan Spence got his first as a Senator. Nice forecheck led to a wraparound goal for Ottawa on the next one. Really nice work from the Cousins, not related. 3-1. Nick Schmaltz then would score an absolute beauty on another high-effort, high-skill goal for Utah. That made it 3-2. Michael Amadio tapped a rebound home in a tight space off a shot from Thomas Chabot. Big goal for the Senators. That made it 4-2, and that was the final. Worth noting, Utah looked fast and skilled, but Ottawa's details seemed better in this one, and that made the difference in what was otherwise an evenly matched game. The Senators scored more goals in hard areas off of great team efforts rather than just great individual efforts. And as someone who's been something of a Senators skeptic, they're starting to win me over a little bit. The fact that they're doing what they're doing without Brady Tkachuk. They have rebounded really nicely since Tkachuk went out. The first couple of games didn't look as great. They've been playing a lot better since then. Brandon Pillar of Locked On Ottawa Senators has the final word on Ottawa's hard edge game.
It was a winning weekend for the Ottawa Senators. I'm Brandon Pillar from the Locked On Senators podcast. And with the 4-2 victory over the Utah Mammoth at home, the Ottawa Senators have now won back-to-back games. And that takes them from out of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference to now third place in the Atlantic Division. And they couldn't have done it without performances from Levi Merilainen, a nice, steady 29-save game, and Jordan Spence. This guy's got to be a mainstay in the lineup now. He had an absolute bomb of a shot for his first goal as an Ottawa Senator and tacked on an assist as well. The Sens will look to keep things rolling with 3 more home games this week. We're going to give you our immediate reaction to this game in the postcast and, of course, more on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
All right. We appreciate that from Brandon. Now, Utah hasn't looked great the last few games that they've played. This has actually been a pretty difficult road trip for them. And I think to a certain extent for a young team, probably to be expected that there is going to be some inconsistency from game to game. And I have wondered if Utah needs still another ace. Like, it's clear they're developing some of them themselves, right? Logan Cooley, potentially Dylan Guenther. They are, and Clayton Keller is an ace. In fact, maybe they don't need another ace. Maybe it's possible that they have enough aces, or if you would prefer to go the Batman Robin analogy, they have enough Batmen, and they have enough Robins as well, right? They have Keller and Cooley, and they have Peterka, and they have Dylan Guenther. So maybe they have enough of those, or maybe they can still afford to get a few more Robins. But I wonder if on the defensive side, there is a thought that maybe Simashev could become this guy, but maybe a true number one to pair with Mikhail Sergachev might not be the worst idea in the world. That said, let's give the final word on this one to Tom Callahan of Locked On Utah Mammoth.
Hi, Mammoth fans. I wish I was coming at you with some better news. I was really picking them for a win over Ottawa, but it was not to be. So a disappointing end to the road trip means 1-3 on the swing that includes only a win over Buffalo in overtime. And that one was close to being only a single point. And suddenly it's a cold snap. Now, the question is, and this is going to be in the podcast dropping on Monday morning, how hot is the seat for Andre Tourigny? You know, if you're an everydayer of this program, we talk about it an awful lot, and guess what? We are going to be talking about it an awful lot more. Something needs to change for this team, because the further they go into the streak, the more it's starting to look like that 7-gamer earlier in the year. Aberration, anomaly. That's not who they are. And that's who we hoped they were. We really did hope that that's who this team was. And it's not looking that way right now. So you know what? They better regroup. They got a critical stretch coming up right through the end of November.
The one thing I'll note there on Tourigny, that's a fair question, a fair hit. I guess the thought process there is it's always tough to be the coach of the rebuilder, and then getting them over the edge is very, very hard. We've seen it in a number of places. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in Ottawa. Somebody else comes in and basically pushes the team over the finish line. That said, Nathan MacKinnon had 4 points in what was possibly the best game of the night, and we'll check in on Dallas, Seattle, and Minnesota, Calgary next on Locked On NHL Game Night. Now, the NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Boy, we head out to Vancouver, and I certainly heard "Don't You Forget About Me" a lot, but not enough times for Vancouver fans. Colorado goes on the road, and after dropping a 9 spot last night, they put 4 more up in regulation and then get the winner in overtime as well. Now, Vancouver at least salvages a point. They scored late. It was their first loser point of the season to at least potentially get a couple of those. The issue with Vancouver this season, the reason they had been so far down in the standings, they had lost all of their games all of their losses at that point had been in regulation. They've been playing 500 hockey without any loser points. That's a tough way to play in this league, especially where this has been the highest percentage of overtime games so far in a season since the introduction of overtime. We'll see if that holds, but that's where it is right now. Colorado still continues to look fast, and they are red hot, man. Nathan MacKinnon, 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists, a point on every Avs goal except for the OT winner, which was a gorgeous piece of work from Gavin Brindley, following his own shot, gets his own rebound. Now, Elias Pettersson's tough season is continuing. He's got a 50% goal share, so not the end of the world, as he was on for 2 against tonight, but only 11 points in 17 games so far this season. Defensively, he's been all right, if not outright good at times. He had another big shot block in overtime. Ultimately didn't matter, but he has been really willing to sacrifice his body. I don't question the effort. I just wonder where the dynamic Pettersson has disappeared to. What has happened? I'm not the only one asking this question. What has happened to EP40? Gavin Brindley, again, just a terrific night for him. Contract Kiefer Sherwood with his 10th goal of the season in this one. He is on pace. I think I did the math. He is on pace to beat his career high in goals by the 32nd game of the season. He has 19 goals as his career high. So he would have 50 more to set a new career high over and over and over again. Good for Kiefer Sherwood. Dallas and Seattle. All the scoring in this one was done in the first period. It was Dallas's 8th 1-goal victory. They're now 8-3 in 1-goal games. From a puck possession perspective, Dallas continues to be dreadful. 31st in the league in shot attempts percentage, but they are slightly better than break even on the high danger stuff, which is part of where they're living and dying. Stars improved to 9-4-3. Seattle falls to 7-4-4. I want to take a minute to talk about a guy named Kaapo Kakko, who is pointless in his 5 games since returning. Now, he was on the ice for Seattle's only goal tonight. He has had a tough start to the season coming back from injury. He has not looked himself. Only played a season low 10 minutes and 19 seconds tonight. He's underwater in goals this season in terms of on-ice goals for Seattle. They are a net negative with him on the ice at 5-on-5. He's underwater in shots and shot percentage. He's underwater in chances, high danger chances. He's got to step up a little bit more now that he is back in the lineup, and he honestly has to earn the trust of a new coach. Kaapo Kakko looked like he was in the middle of a redemption story with Seattle last season, looking more like the player New York traded to Seattle when that trade went down last December. And finally, we finished the night with Minnesota and Calgary dominated the quantity in this one, but fairly even in terms of quality chances. Minnesota takes slight advantage. They get a goal in the second period from Matt Boldy, his 8th of the season. Kirill Kaprizov's 10th came with an empty net. Jesper Wallstedt, this is the big story for me, stops all 36 shots that he faced. Wallstedt has had a strange journey since being drafted. He went from looking like maybe the best goalie prospect in the world to having a very, very up and down pre-NHL, post-draft pre-NHL career. And he hasn't been particularly good in the NHL. If you look at his time, he's been better this season. I think this is quality start number 5 for him out of 6, and maybe the best start of his entire career, stopping all 36 shots that he faced. Second shutout of his career. Devin Cooley stopped 7 of 18 in this one for Calgary. More on them in just a moment. First, let's hear from Seth Topol of Locked On Minnesota Wild with the last word on the Wild's win.
The Calgary Flames had the Minnesota Wild's number last season. This year, Jesper Wallstedt sent them straight to voicemail in the first matchup of the season. Hey everybody, Seth Topol, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, recapping a 2-0 win for the Minnesota Wild over the Calgary Flames. Not a lot of goals, as this was a defensive struggle between both of these teams. And even though the Flames aren't playing well, they represented a matchup challenge for the Wild last season. This year, a goal from Matt Boldy in the second period was all Jesper Wallstedt needed, as he stopped all 36 shots that he faced and became the 4th goaltender in Minnesota Wild history to earn multiple shutouts as a rookie. His first of the season, 2nd of his career, and the Minnesota Wild pick up a big win at home against the Flames, courtesy of an empty netter from Kirill Kaprizov. For more on the Minnesota Wild, make sure you follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All right. Thanks, Seth. Calgary, one quick note on the Flames. They fall to 4-11-2. They are still the front runners right now in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, or whatever we're calling it for right now. Some interesting commentary on McKenna's performance at Penn State so far this season makes it sound like there's still room for someone else to take that role. I was reading some of Scott Wheeler's work from The Athletic, and it sounds like he's still the guy, but there's a question if someone could take the spot from him. Regardless, Calgary is the front runner for the best odds for the number one overall pick. If this continues, they are 31st in total goals, 31st on the power play entering the night, 25th in 5-on-5 goals. And if this continues that way, their season is done. Real quick, before we get out of here, folks, reminder, tomorrow night, we've got 4 games on the docket. Rangers, Predators. Can the Rangers finally win at home? I hope so. How close is Vincent Trocheck to returning? Gabe Perreault set to make his debut after a stellar start to his AHL career. Can that give the Rangers offense the shot in the arm it needs? The only teams worse at scoring goals than Calgary, the New York Rangers. Devils Isles, a surprising Islanders team, looks to do what nobody else has done this year, beat New Jersey at the Rock. That's Monday night. Columbus and Edmonton, 2 teams searching for answers right now. The Jackets' difficult West Coast road trip providing answers I don't think they're going to like. Meanwhile, the Oilers were embarrassed in the most lopsided loss of the season against an Avs team that looks in a very different place than this Edmonton team. The Avs look ready to run through the wall. Edmonton appears to be the wall right now. Florida and Vegas, these are 2 teams that should not be panicking quite yet, but Florida's injury issues require them to tread water and avoid drowning in it. Meanwhile, Vegas has to keep an eye on this Anaheim team that might be ready to ascend to the top of the Pacific Division, where it seemed like Vegas would simply be unchallenged for yet another season. We'll break all that down and more tomorrow on Locked On NHL Game Night. Eddie Garcia will join the program then. If you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, there is a Locked On NHL Team podcast and YouTube show for you, because we have one for every NHL team. That's right, all 32 teams. This show, Locked On NHL Game Night, is here for you each and every night of the regular season and the playoffs, wrapping up the night in the National Hockey League. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show if you're watching on YouTube. We want to see your thoughts on tonight's games in the comment section, and tell me, who is the best of these 3 ascending superstars? Who would you rather build your franchise around right now? Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, or the man who's reminding you that he's actually here as well and has arrived, Leo Carlsson? That will do it for this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Alex Wiederspiel. Thanks for listening and for watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the #1 sports podcasting network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.